So good afternoon, everybody who is following our page in Facebook, Desbravando Mundo Livre, and also Jonas ou Ingênuo, which is a book that we are also selling at the same website. I'd like today to introduce Ken Schoolland, who is the author of Jonas ou Ingênuo, and we invited him to share with us a little bit about the process. Yeah, this is important. To share a little bit about the process relating to writing this book and everything that has gone on since the first edition in English. Welcome, Ken. Nice to have you here with us. Well, the first question I think we cannot escape is what motivated you to write the book?
Well, it actually started as radio commentary. I was asked to comment as an economist on, as a libertarian economist, on ideas that were, in the news here in Hawaii. It was an all-news business radio station, and so it had a business audience. And I would get on, and I had 90 seconds to make my commentary, and it was just a very brief comment about various issues, and nobody seemed to be paying any attention at all. And I had just read The Little Prince and Gulliver's Travels, and realized that very profound ideas could be presented in an entertaining way, and with satire and humor. And at the time, I had a girlfriend who I thought, well, she might be interested in sharing the 90 seconds in a dialogue. A dialogue is much more engaging on radio because you have multiple voices and questions and answers and all. So I thought, oh, I'll write this as a radio. As you may recall, we last left Jonathan Gullible on a remote Pacific island after his boat was tossed about by a terrific storm. One day, and then you get into these little brief episodes where Jonathan had encounters with people. And the key wasn't to just tell people, to preach to them what a free market is. It was to challenge them by questions, the way the Little Prince does, going from asteroid to asteroid in the story by Anton de Saint-Exupéry. I don't know if you're familiar with that story, but at any rate, it's a clever tool I think it's a clever tool to try and engage the listener by pointing out the contradictions in people's policies and lifestyle and decisions and so on. And instantly there was a big response from around town. Everybody seemed to like it. They got a laugh out of it. They saw how it applied to local issues in their own way, because people interpret things differently. And because it was so well received, I decided to do another episode, and then episode after episode. Every week I had this radio commentary. And after I had about 40 of these episodes, there was a man from Small Business Hawaii that thought, well, this could be put into a book and used in the schools. And so this was Sam Sloan of Small Business Hawaii who published it first as a book. And well, we got it published, and there wasn't any interest in the Department of Education here, because they were very suspicious about any free market message, especially coming from Sam Sloan and Small Business Hawaii. I had run in politics here, and they knew my politics were very free market, and that doesn't go over too well in Hawaii. But then I went to the Liberty International World Conference in Europe, and I'm a part of this. It's an organization to try and promote free market ideas around the world. And they were very enthused about it. So the first international edition was done in the Netherlands. And then the second one was right at the collapse of the Iron Curtain in Russia. And I had met a young man in Russia who was at the time just trying to earn some money. I went there to St. Petersburg to experience Russia after the fall of the Iron Curtain, and he was quite interested in these ideas about free markets, and he said, "Well, I'll publish this book." He wanted to earn some money, so it was. His friend said, "How did you get the government permission at this government publishing house to publish this free market book?" And he says the first time they never even asked for permission; they just wanted money, and so he published 5,000 editions in Russian, and it sold out within 2 months, I think. And thereafter, it's been published a lot. As you may know, the book has been published in 57 languages now, with 87 editions, because many of them are multiple editions. Like in Portuguese, we have now 2 editions, thankfully. And so it's reached a very broad international audience. And we're even making a film out of this now, a video series that hopefully will turn it into animation.
Wow, that's great. I didn't know. Yeah, you should inform us as soon as it is published, this new animated series, because it is really a great challenge.
These, by the way,
all the
these are
translation.
the editions.
Oh, I see.
Here's the Italian edition. And I mean, there's a story behind each and every one of these. This is the Georgian edition from Tbilisi, the Czech edition from Prague. We have an Esperanto edition.
Esperanto edition.
We have a couple Spanish editions. Actually, the newest, this one was published in Buenos Aires, your neighbor. There's a more recent one published in Colombia as a bilingual edition, Spanish and English. And then we have a Sinhala edition in Sri Lanka. The South Korean edition published in Seoul. The French edition was published as this, even some far away in Kyrgyzstan. I don't know if you want to see them all, but that's gives you an idea about what they're like.
You should feel proud about having your book in so many languages. It's not for everybody. It's really not for everybody. But one thing sorry.
Oh yeah, well, I also to answer your question, why this book, when I was when people will ever ask me, well, what do you do? I say, well, I teach economics. And they would say, oh, that was a miserable experience because economics is so dry and boring and irrelevant to so many people. And I kind of got tired of that. I thought economics should be fun and interesting. It's something that affects everybody. It's a part of life and their future. So I thought, well, it shouldn't be dry and boring. So the book itself gives probably more than 100 lessons about economics and economics concepts in a very fun and enjoyable way. And so I thought there's no reason that economics should be left out of that sort of thing. And I think that that's been part of its success. People like the idea of learning economics and economics concepts that's not out of the textbook.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, over the last century, there were many libertarian books, fiction books about liberty in different spheres, with especially sci-fi over the 60s and the 70s, which had like a pro-freedom message, but it was not so clear. There was Ayn Rand, there was Henry Hazlitt, each of whom trying to spread the word about liberty from a different perspective. But really, books for young people, like you wrote and Connor wrote, it is really a new thing. It is from the 90s onwards. So I didn't ask you about the year you wrote the book, you published the first edition. When was it?
Well, the first episodes that I did on radio was around 1980. And then by 1989, I had gone up to Alaska and I put it into a radio series to put it together as a package. And then I came back to Hawaii, and it was published by Small Business Hawaii around 1989, the very first edition. And the very first edition was a simple illustrated edition that was, well, it was like this. But it was too much of a children's edition. This is actually the Russian version of it that was published. So we added chapters to it. I had a fabulous editor, a woman, Flora Ling, who had been an editor with Money Magazine and Forbes magazine, and she dove into it and gave it literary style, which I wasn't so good at, and so that gave a lot of depth to the book. Now the chapters are not 90-second reading; they're longer. Instead of 1.5 pages, it would be maybe 3 pages per chapter. And then we did a commentary edition that was intended to try and give depth to it. This is the Bengali edition, but basically each chapter had commentary and references, and it was more for the educator to have some background about each chapter and how these relate to contemporary issues. And I found that because I wrote it in an era of long past, that it could quite easily be adapted to almost any country. It wasn't time specific, and it wasn't issue specific. And that was important to be accepted broadly over a long period of time. And so whenever I went traveling to a country, and like, for example, in Poland, I remember people coming in and saying, "How long were you living in Poland? Do you understand our issues this way?" I said, I wasn't living in Poland. I was writing about Hawaii originally, but these are pretty much universal issues. And if you write about it in a neutral format, then it can be broadly accepted. And also, when I first did the Russian edition, this guy, by the way, that published this, Dmitry Kostigin, he went on to become a billionaire in the grocery business in Russia, quite famous, and into trouble with the government from time to time. He also, you may be pleased to know, he also published translated and published the books of Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged.
I didn't know.
Yeah, and he was living in St. Petersburg, where Ayn Rand was originally from. And by the way, Alyssa in the story of Jonathan Gullible, that's Ayn Rand's original name. I think it was Alyssa Rosenbaum.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he said, well, the Soviet Union has just collapsed, and they've got this wide open to free market ideas and stuff like that, but they don't understand things like property and taxes. Could you write a preface to the book that explains that sort of stuff? So I did. I wrote an epilogue, actually an introduction then, that was so well received, called The Philosophy of Liberty, that then I put it in as the epilogue to every subsequent edition. And then one guy liked it very much and made it an animation, an 8-minute animation, which you may have seen, The Philosophy of Liberty, on my website. And it's been translated into 47 languages, I think, 46 languages. And it's gone international too, viral on the internet through YouTube and so on. Explaining in very simple terms something that I think that the objectivists and the Randians would appreciate very much, talking about how you own your own life, and then explaining the principles of property and taxes and stuff related to that. So at any rate, that was all related to this too.
Yeah, it might seem strange for a free market economist to have to write an epilogue about property and concepts like that. It seems sometimes when you discuss with people, especially with people who are not necessarily pro freedom or without any background in economics, they don't have a clear definition in their minds about property and these really important concepts. So this is really necessary up to our day. Even in 2022, most people don't get it, don't get the meaning and the importance of these concepts. So you said that you found a different way to explore the ideas of liberty by writing books and by having a different dialogue structure to your radio podcast. Why do you think the conventional way to teach economics is not as effective as it could be, I believe, or it should be, in a sense? Do you think that given the changes that we've been through in the last 20 years with technology and many other things, do you still believe that the traditional way of teaching economics still makes sense for us today, or really maybe we should try something different, especially for the younger generations?
Yeah, for the younger generation, it should be different. I still teach economics. In fact, yesterday I had 3 classes that I'm teaching: money and banking and principles of macroeconomics, and a course on international trade and finance. I still teach economics, but I'm sure that the students are getting used to an entirely different mode of learning. They're desperately want to hold on to their iPhones, their laptops, and have this with them, guiding them every step of every minute of the day, And so really, I tell them, well, the classroom is a very professional environment, like you were working for a company, and you have to turn those things off and let's concentrate and be real human beings together. But I know that the electronic thing is mesmerizing for young people, and that's why we're making this animation, and why the philosophy of liberty has been so useful on the website. May I just share my screen and give you some a quick overview of the kinds of things I talk about with regard to my book? Is it okay if I share my screen? I don't know if I
yes, you just need to share screen in the middle of the
Here's the my presentation about the book, the multitude of language editions that have been around the world. The most recent one is produced by Jorge Castro and Esteban Gonzalez in Colombia, and of course the one in Brazil that was produced, the Adventures of Jonas. And this is the one. These are the 2 versions in Portuguese that were produced over the years. And then I'm also grateful to Judy Nagy in Quito. She's passed away, but she was the one that produced the very first Spanish language edition up here in the upper left-hand corner, with some illustrations and all. And this photo is of me when I made a presentation in Peru, talking about the Spanish edition. But over here in the lower right is the new bilingual Spanish edition produced by Sertel organization. And we've had the book essentially takes place on an island, and it has its roots from The Little Prince and the Gulliver's Travels, in having an adventure story where you don't preach to people, you simply ask questions, and people either reveal wisdom or they reveal the folly of their position, their hypocrisy, and it's usually done in a satirical way. And that's one thing that I notice everywhere. Tyrants, authoritarians hate to be laughed at, and that's what satire does. That's where everybody in the audience, the readers, like it, because they like being able to laugh at their leaders. So humor is a critical point, and that's throughout the book. I take wisdom from George Orwell, who said that every joke is a tiny revolution. And there's lots and lots of examples about how this occurs. I like one book here called Hammer and Tickle, where they actually talk about the jokes that brought down the Soviet Union. That was one thing that constantly undermined the censors and the political elite. It has to be concise. The story has to be brief, as it was for radio. People's attention is limited, so they have these. They have to have a focus and a quick, short message. That's why each chapter is just 2 or 3 pages long. On the radio, it was 90 seconds, and in reading, I think people were able to keep compartmentalizing all of these different messages because it wasn't a long, extensive, boring textbook. It's a book that gives this philosophy from primarily a market philosophy. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I shouldn't just go on with all
no,
this
but
stuff.
I think we can continue because the presentation is really great. It was nice that you brought it up because it helps to contextualize a little bit of the goals you had. Well, you summarized a little bit of the story. If you'd like to add something more, otherwise, I have another question, more of a philosophical question. Over the years, if we look at the libertarian movement overall, the biggest issue was the quest for an ethical, a moral defense of capitalism. Each author, in its own way, try to propose a solution to this dilemma, and leaving aside specific philosophies, why is the study of ethics so important for economics?
Why is the what so effective for economics?
What is the importance of ethics in the context of studying economics, especially in the moral defense of capitalism in our case?
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because so often people are talking about economics as, well, a practical point of view. Well, what works? What produces wealth? What produces generates prosperity, and so on. And yes, that's important for economics, but to me, the most important message of all is ethics. And you'll notice that in the back of, when I list the questions at the end of every chapter of the 40 chapters, every question at the end of each chapter always asks the question about what ethical issues are involved. And to me, it always comes down to the non-aggression principle. For libertarians, this is a very critical point. If I don't have the right to initiate violence or fraud against you, then I don't have the right to ask the government to do it on my behalf, or anyone else to do it on my behalf. It's still the same thing. If I steal from you, it's stealing. If I take your life, it's murder. And every moral system always says that it's wrong to steal, wrong to kill, wrong to covet, wrong to lie. If those things are wrong, then it isn't sanitized and made right by asking a government official to do it, because government officials are no different than any other human beings, and they have no rights that are superior to the rest of us. And so I think this is the most fundamental thing. Yes, I believe free markets are very, very practical. That's what produces the greatest prosperity. But more importantly, it's ethical, because it's based on ethical principles. And that's the first and foremost thing that is overlooked in every other textbook. Every economics textbook always is looking at what is the practical effect of this policy or that policy. And to me, the most fundamental thing, and that's why I put this in the book as the epilogue, no, the most fundamental thing is the ethics, the principle of voluntarism. That people behave and produce so much because they're benefiting each other, and they're prosperous because of the human interaction or human action, but not because of some government official that has dictated and mandated what we should do in our lives.
No, for sure. I totally agree. Just for us to recap on one specific thing, how many languages your book was translated to so far? You mentioned before.
Okay. Yeah, it's been translated into 61 languages.
61.
But 57 have been published. A few of them have not yet been published for various reasons, but the Chichewa edition in Malawi has not yet been published. The Berber edition has not been published. The Swedish edition has not been published. The Norwegian edition was originally published in a very, very simple edition of it, but it started to be reproduced in a journal, but the journal didn't succeed, so only the first couple chapters were published. So there's a few languages out there that, well, in Russian, we had the first Russian edition, but then we got a new translation of the full new edition of Jonathan Gullible into Russian, but it was never published officially. Now, I had a Russian student one time, and I asked him to go online to see if he could find the book in Russia anywhere, and he found probably a dozen websites that were offering it either online or in published versions that I never knew about. Frankly, I was delighted that the Russians found so much interest in the book. All unauthorized editions, but what the hell? I'm eager to get them to adopt the ideas. So,
No, for sure. Yeah, this is something that really happens a lot here in Brazil as well. There are many books that are not really of interest for the regular publisher that at the end of the day gets an informal translation and the ideas get out and have an impact. So it happens a lot, and it's great to have several examples here in Brazil. So about the book itself, do you have a favorite chapter?
yeah, probably whenever people ask me to give an illustration, well, the very first one that I give is after Jonathan lands on the island. The very first thing that happens that he sees this woman who's being dragged off by these burly men, and he wants to help. She's screaming out for help, and so he goes up to this clearing up in the woods, and can you please help me rescue this woman from this these guys who are dragging her away. And the supervisor in charge there says, no, she's been arrested for threatening all the jobs of these men here working here. And Jonathan says, what? How could this frail woman be threatening the jobs of these tree workers? Well, as you can see, we stand around trees and we knock them down with sticks. And it can take sometimes 100 men a whole month to knock down a good-sized tree. But she came to work this morning with a sharp metal piece attached to the end of her stick, and she knocked down a whole tree all by herself within less than an hour. Clearly, this threat to our traditional employment had to be arrested. And Jonathan says, well, wait a minute. You can, that's efficiency. You can take your time now. Instead of knocking down trees, you can build tables and chairs and houses and boats and all that. Oh, no, the purpose of work in this society is not to have products, it's to have secure and unchanging employment. And, this, I think, is a favorite because it points out the folly of some of the thinking that new ideas are a threat to society because they bring change. Milton Friedman one time was observing that in China, I guess, they had all these men standing around, they were using shovels to build this road, and he saw that a tractor was on the side of the road, and he said, well, couldn't you use this tractor and accomplish the same amount of work much more efficiently? And they said, oh no, but then they wouldn't have jobs to do. So he said, well, if you're really here just to make jobs, then wouldn't it be better if you use spoons instead of shovels, you know, because you could create more jobs and not produce anything.
And
But, you know, a lot of times, you know, go ahead. Yeah.
no, and I mean, when you talk about that, I mean, here in Brazil, we are in the middle of a new presidential election campaign. So it is funny, not to say sad, to hear many people really proposing projects financed by the government to do exactly that. I mean, just to employ people ineffectively, to supposedly create prosperity or new bridges or stuff like that. And it's really funny that this important and basic lesson, it is not clear. So that's why we need to work, especially with young people, so that when they turn to adulthood, they are able to make better decisions, right? Especially in terms of politics and also in their own lives. And I think this last sentence serves to wrap up a little bit about of everything we discussed in our conversation. That what are the main lessons contained in the book that are universal and atemporal, that they had an impact when you first wrote the book, and that they should continue have an impact for many years to come?
Well, I think that Jonathan constantly, he doesn't say it directly, but indirectly, he's making it obvious that free markets are much more productive and successful and ethical as opposed to central planning, the government authority figures trying to force people into certain paths, and they see it around them all the time. And so, you know, the book tries to show it in a lot of different contexts, you know, like in the school or in the workplace or in building policy. All these times, you know, government policy just stands in the way of basic logic and common sense. So freedom works when people view it that way, I think.
Yeah, this is the biggest lesson we are trying to teach. You are trying to teach to young people. And of course, we've seen a lot of changes, positive changes over the past 30 years. I think that we should be thankful for the great thinkers that came before us. And we are doing our part to make it have an impact in the years ahead. So I'd like to thank you for our short interview. I hope we can make more and more interviews like this. And I wish you a great day, Ken.
Great. May I just show one more slide?
Well, feel free to, for sure.
Okay, I just want to show you this one slide here of the people who influenced me, because people say, well, how come, well, wait a minute here. I don't know if you're seeing.
Yes.
What I show here. This, well, wait a minute. There, this slide here about the thinkers and ideas. You know, most of the ideas I didn't originate. These are from a whole lot of philosophers and economists throughout history. And these are the guys who really the originators of these ideas. I just package it in a way that makes it more appealing, more entertaining to contemporary eyes. And so, you know, please think about that as the source. The book isn't Ken Schoolland's view on the world. my way of compiling together the ideas of great thinkers throughout history, great libertarian or free market minds, I would say.
Yeah, there are so many lessons to be learned, right, from all these authors. I'm gonna let me put here.